All right, welcome back to another episode of TNC Sportscast. Today we're going to be doing a little starts and sits and risks for week 6. We got 7 players per category. Like always, subscribe, hit that follow button, go to TNC Sportscast on TikTok, and let's get into the video. All right, starting off with Justin Fields. He's a start this week. For me and Tara, we agreed that he is definitely a start against the Las Vegas Raiders. Bo Nix played really well against him, and I think Justin Fields could do the same thing. He played against the Dallas Cowboys last week, only had 15.9, but I think he could have a big bounce back week against Las Vegas Raiders. They're allowing the 12th most points to quarterbacks, and I think I'm starting him over a couple guys like Brock Purdy, Jared Goff, Baker Mayfield, guys that have been playing about the same level, but Justin Fields has that rushing ability that I think will help him so much more, and I think he might even get a rushing touchdown this week, so I'm starting him.
All right, our second quarterback start for this week is Kirk Cousins going on against the Carolina Panthers. I mean, look what he did against Tampa Bay last week. Was kind of a shootout, so he did just kind of rack up the points. But look at what Caleb Williams did against the Panthers last week. I mean, he balled over 20 points for him, I believe. And the Panthers are giving up the 5th most points to quarterbacks this year. I just think Kirk Cousins, with all of his weapons and them involving Kyle Pitts now, another receiving weapon for him, I think he's going to have a pretty good game against a pretty crappy defense. So definitely start Kirk Cousins this week. I'd start him over a majority of guys just because of his matchup. But yeah, definitely a start for this week.
All right, heading over to running backs. For our first start, we have Chase Brown playing the New York Giants. It looks like he's going to be the starting running back this week because Zach Moss hurt his ankle and he might be out. So I think he's an automatic start. He's been getting a lot of work with Zach Moss in the role playing, and they've been kind of 50-50 right now. Even Chase Brown getting a lot of goal line work. He's that reception guy. He's getting 3 targets, 3 receptions a game. He had 15 and 12 carries the past 2 weeks. So I think he's going to be an automatic start. He's going to be that main guy. And until Zach Moss is back in, I think Chase Brown is an automatic start.
All right, so our second running back this week for our starts is Najee Harris going up against the Las Vegas Raiders, who the Raiders have been giving up tons and tons of points to running backs this year. But Najee Harris hasn't had the best games, 9 points and 10 points the last 2 weeks, but he's going, like I said, to Vegas, who's giving him a lot of points. I think he's probably going to get a touchdown this game, getting that goal line work, getting the passing work. All of the running backs in that room right now are all kind of dealing with injuries besides Najee, so I think he's going to be that workhorse back. And like I said, get some receiving work, get some running work, get the goal line work. He's going to do it all. And I think with a good matchup against the Raiders, he's going to have a good week this week.
All right, moving over to our starts for wide receiver, we have Jalen Tolbert of the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, he looks like the guy that stepped in for the role of Brandon Cooks that got put on the IR, and I think it's going to be really good for him. He out-targeted CeeDee Lamb last week against the Pittsburgh Steelers, having 10 targets, 7 receptions, 87 yards, and he was able to haul in the game-winning touchdown, which really boosts his confidence, boosts Dak Prescott's confidence, throwing to him. I think that chemistry is going to keep building and building while Brandon Cooks is out, and I think he's an automatic start in 12-man leagues, flex, 10-man leagues. He's going to be the wide receiver 2 at this point, and playing against the Detroit Lions, who have been really struggling against wide receivers. You saw what DK JSN did last time they played, because obviously they had a bye week last week. But I think he is honestly a start for these next couple weeks until Brandon Cooks comes back. But even if he keeps playing like this, he might take the role of Brandon Cooks. So I think he'll start.
All right, another wide receiver you must start this week, Darnell Mooney. He's been a must start for a couple weeks now, having some great games, but 31 points this past week against Tampa Bay. Huge game for him, huge game for Kirk. He was targeting him the whole game. He was getting all the dump downs, he was going over the top. I don't even know what to say. He just balled against, honestly, not a bad Tampa Bay defense. But, no, I think Darnell Mooney, from now on, he has some really good matchups down the road this week against the Carolina Panthers, a really bad secondary. Look what DJ Moore did to them. Drake London's probably going to have a really good game, too. But I just think with how much Kirk looks Darnell Mooney's way, he's got to be in your starting lineups almost every week from now on. Having a 31-point performance, that just submits him as a start, in my opinion. So, yeah, definitely go put him in your starting lineups and start him from here on out.
All right, moving on to tight ends, we have Tucker Kraft. He's an automatic start, I feel like. He's outplaying all these big tight ends. He had 24 points last week. 2 weeks ago, he had 17. He looks like Jordan Love's, safety net. They're making plays for him. They're making screens. Tarek's been kind of bragging about him. Cole Kmet's better, in my opinion. But, 6 receptions, 4 receptions. He had 88 yards last week, 2 touchdowns. He's got 3 touchdowns in the past 2 weeks. I mean, he looks like Jordan Love's like safety net. He looks like Jordan Love's guy. It's either Jaden Reed or Tucker Kraft at this point. No one else can catch balls. Dontavian Wicks, what are you doing? You need to lock in. But I think Tucker Kraft is another guy that you could start this week.
All right, let's move over to the sits of this video. Trevor Lawrence, you know what? Had a good week, I'll admit. Playing the Indianapolis Colts, crappy team. He's not going to play like that against the Chicago Bears. I hate to say it as a Packers fan, but the Bears have a hell of a defense right now. And honestly, I think they're going to lock up Trevor. I think they're going to lock up the receivers, the running backs. I think it's going to be a good game for the Bears. But I just think you probably are looking at him like, let's start him. He had a 22-point game. No, just don't. Don't even do it. I mean, before that, he had 11, 13, 10, 14. Has one game over 20 all year. You don't want to start him. You want to sit him. The Bears are giving up the least amount of points to quarterbacks right now. And just trust me, you want to sit him.
Our second quarterback that we are sitting is sadly Drake May. He finally took that starting role from Jacoby Brissett. And I think he's going to do better. He might do better as long as the weeks go on. But it's going to be a tough matchup against Houston Texans. As you see what they did against Caleb Williams, they just sacked him. And I feel like the New England line isn't as good right now, and they're just going to get a lot of sacks. I think it's going to be a really tough game for Drake May. But as the weeks go on, I think he'll get better. But week one, it's a sit.
All right, our sit at running back, sadly, I have to say it, Brian Robinson. I do have him in a league. But, I mean, he had 13 points, and he had 18 yards and 2 touchdowns. So, basically, 2 touchdowns is what Brian Robinson had last week. But he's playing Baltimore. Tough matchup already. So week 7 he has Carolina, so don't get rid of him quite yet, I would say. But just sit him this week against Baltimore. That's a tough matchup. He also is having like a knee injury. He sat out today, it actually says. So I don't know if he's going to play. I'm guessing he's going to play. He had the same kind of injury thing last week. But I think just against Baltimore, it's just too much of a risk. So I definitely sit him and then just keep him on your team for next week.
All right, our second running back that we are sitting this week is Rachaad White. It just seems like they're just 50-50 right now with Bucky Irving. And I think that Bucky Irving is looking better, and he's looking better every week. So I think Rachaad White is obviously a sit. I mean, he had a decent week, 9.6 last week, and that's only because he had a, 45-yard run. If you take that away, he's got like 5. So I think that just shows that he's not explosive. He's not as good as Bucky Irving. The only reason why he is pretty good is because he gets those receptions. But Bucky Irving can do the same thing. And Bucky Irving looks like the goal line back. So I think it's going to be really hard for Rachaad White to be good. And he's playing New Orleans. That's been a pretty good defense, 2 running backs. So I think it's going to be a pretty tough week for him. So I'm going to be sitting him.
All right, moving over to our wide receiver sit for the week. George Pickens, he just had a quiet week against Dallas last week. I mean, yes, it's a tough defense. It was raining, not ideal conditions for a receiver, but had 5 fantasy points. He hasn't been having like bad weeks, 16 before that, 10 before that. But I just think Cooper was telling me something about one of the coaches said they were going to reduce the snaps for him to be more explosive. We saw that on the internet. And I just think with Najee getting more work, I think they're going to try to go back to that old Pittsburgh way of running the ball and just trying to punch it down the defense's throat. I mean, they do spread it out, but I just think Justin Fields isn't the passing guy, in my opinion, at least. I think he's more a running guy. I think they're going to rely on the run. I don't think Pickens is a start. And I mean, looking down the road, maybe if he proves it, but just right now, I don't see him as a start.
Moving on over to our second sit for wide receivers, Ladd McConkey. He is that wide receiver 1 for the Chargers, and they're coming off a bye week, but they're playing the Denver Broncos, and PS2 is looking like the best corner in the league. I mean, that Broncos defense is playing so good. They're allowing the second least points to wide receivers since week 1, and they're just looking like the powerhouse, and they might even sneak in. Hot take right here. They might sneak into the playoffs just because of their defense playing so good. That's my hot take for the year. But, yeah, Ladd McConkey, he's looking like that wide receiver 1, getting 7-6 targets per game, averaging about, I'd say, 60 yards per game. And he's getting a couple touchdowns, got 2 touchdowns on the year. But having PS2 on him just shuts him down the entire game. So I'm sitting him.
All right, our last sit for the week is a tight end, David Njoku, playing the Philadelphia Eagles. He came back, had 2 points in their loss to the Commanders. Deshaun Watson is very bad. But I just think, until he proves himself, he's one of those guys. If he proves himself, then I'd start him next week. But until he proves himself from coming back, I don't want to have anything to do with him. I don't want to have anything to do with Deshaun Watson. I think the Browns probably are going to have a top 5 pick in the draft this year. I just don't think they're a good team. Their defense isn't bad, but their offense is just terrible. So definitely stay away from David Njoku, and he's definitely a sit for this week.
All right, starting off with the risks, we got a quarterback, Baker Mayfield. Like I said prior in the video, I'm starting guys like Justin Fields over him. I just think he has a tough matchup against the Saints this week. And obviously he's gotten a couple good weeks back-to-back, 28, 23. But I think New Orleans has a really good secondary, and they've been playing really good. Patrick Mahomes did not play that good against him, and I think Baker Mayfield will do about the same. He'll probably put up 15, 16, but he does not have that big upside this week. So I'm thinking there's a couple guys that I'm starting over him.
Another risky pick for this week is Justin Herbert. I mean, just not a good fantasy quarterback in general for this year. Week 1 had 10, week 2 had 12, week 3 had 9, week 4 had 11. So, last week he had a bye playing the Denver Broncos this week. I feel like they're going to run the ball a lot because Denver's run defense is pretty bad. But PS2, Pat Surtain, he's been balling. So I don't really think they're going to pass a lot. I think they're going to use J.K. Dobbins a lot this week. I think they're just going to kind of mainly rely on that. And for that reason, I just don't think he's going to get a lot of points. And just not perform well. So, yeah, definitely a risky pick. I'd lean more towards a sit, but just a risky pick in general.
All right, another risky pick we have this week is Rico Dowdle. He kind of low-key had that blow-up game. He finally solidified himself as the RB1 for the Dallas Cowboys. But coming into town, playing the Detroit Lions, I think that's going to be a tough matchup for him. I mean, he did have 19 points and that touchdown, which is a really good week in my opinion. But going into Detroit, it's going to be really hard for him to get these big plays. It's going to be a close game. They're going to be throwing the ball a lot. They can't really just run out the clock with Rico Dowdle. Obviously, he could be used in the passing game, which gives him a lot of upside. But if he scores a touchdown, it's going to be a good week. If he doesn't score a touchdown, it's going to be a bad week, in my opinion. So that's why he's a risk.
All right, another running back that's kind of a risky pick this week, Javonte Williams, going up against the Chargers this week. Played the Raiders last week, had a pretty good game, had 16 points. But he got a lot of receptions. He got 6 receptions last week for 50 yards. He's a risky pick because he's only had one game that's been good for fantasy. So I just think for those reasons, it's a risky pick. He might still have a good game against the Chargers, kind of a mediocre defense. Still not a bad defense, but I just feel like just a risky pick until he proves himself farther. But who knows? Last week might have been the start that he needed, and he might just have some good games from here on out. So risky pick right now, like I said, but you could start him, but just no. It's a little risky.
All right, moving over to receivers now for our risks. First one is Amari Cooper with the Browns. I think just Deshaun Watson looks horrible. I mean, this whole offense is getting destroyed by Deshaun. I mean, you just need to start Jameis Winston at this point. Like, he might do better. But he's getting those targets 12, 8, 10, 8, 9. Like, those are good targets for a wide receiver one. But the thing is, he's getting 4 receptions, 3 receptions. Like, a lot of these targets are uncatchable, and, like, he just can't do anything. Like, it just sucks that he has Deshaun Watson. He's a really good receiver, but he might get traded, so we never know. Kansas City Chief, maybe. But he just can't get over this hump of having Deshaun Watson. Plus, he's going against Philly. The only upside is Philly's defense has been really, really so-so against secondary, or their secondary has been so-so, but he's just risky for me.
All right, our last wide receiver for risks for this week is Brian Thomas. Has had amazing last 2 weeks, 21 and 23 points. I mean, he was a waiver wire pickup in some leagues, so he's doing really, really well. But I'm not going to lie, leaning towards sit this week for him. I know it's a risk, but Chicago's defense is for real. Me personally, I'm sitting Christian Kirk. I know he's not Christian Kirk, but just the receivers against Chicago, I would not do it. I think their defense has been balling lately. I don't know how well Trevor's going to do against them, getting pressure and then still having to throw the ball. So right now, it's a risky pick. I'd lean towards sit, but if you really have to, you can start him.
All right, last but not least, our risks, tight end, Dalton Kincaid from the Buffalo Bills. He just has not been very good this year. He does not. Everybody thought that he was going to be that number one guy. Stephon Diggs leaves. He's going to fill in, be that number one, get all the targets, get all the touchdowns. But he's only had 1 touchdown on the year. 2 points, 7 points, 13 points with a touchdown, 9 points, 5 points, and he's playing against a really, really tough New York Jets defense that have been playing amazing, locking everybody up. The only reason why the Jets are in games so far this year. And I mean, if the Jets offense played any way good, they would be really good. But, I mean, you saw what they did to George Kittle in week 1. And Dalton Kincaid seems like the next best guy that they've played this year. And I don't think he's going to get over this hump. I mean, Josh Allen played really bad. He only completed like 10 passes last week. I think it was 9 to be specific. But single-digit passes against the New York Jets, you can't do this. So if Josh Allen does bad, he's going to do bad. And I think Josh Allen is going to have a tough week. So I think he's going to be a risk. But if you boys enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button. Go to our TikTok, like I said, TNC Sportscast. Subscribe, hit that bell so you know when we post. But we're going to be posting a lot more videos, a lot more TikToks. Keep pumping them out for you guys. One last thing, like always, see ya!